Hey guys, welcome back to Bohs Fan TV. And today we're going to be doing another transfer video. We done one a few weeks ago, but that was kind of in the early stages of the window. The season wasn't over yet. Now the season is kind of over. I know there's a cup final on Sunday, but Bohs' season is over, and a lot of the teams in the league season is over. So the rumours and transfers are starting to pick up pace, and there's been a few whispers coming out lately. So first things, how are you, Aaron?
Grant.
Yeah, it's been a busy few days in the League of Ireland in terms of transfers. I'm sure it's going to get even busier within the next few weeks and months. Um, so firstly, we'll start with some of the departures. It looks as if Danny Corkin is going to be leaving the club. What do you think of that?
It's sad to see the way his career kind of ended with the whole injury and then not getting back in the team. But he's been a great servant to Bohs, and wherever he goes, we all wish him well anyway. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think he always gave 100% when he played for Bohs. He was very unlucky about injury. He just never came back the same player. Um, but wherever he goes, I still hope he does well. Because he is a top striker, even though he is getting in his early 30s now. I still think he can definitely be in there in the bracket for at least top five strikers in the league, even when he's on his best form. So there's been some departures as well. Michael Barker signed for Shels. What do you make of that?
Well, Michael Barker was always one of those kind of backup centre backs. So if he was looking for game time, you'd expect him to leave. But to go to Shells is he's obviously wanted to stay around the area and play with another Dublin team. So maybe going down to the first division could be good for him.
Yeah, I think when he was played, I thought he done quite well.
Yeah.
He put in a good shift, even though he didn't get many games. He was always kind of second fiddle to the main defenders like Casey, Cornwall, Lyons. Um, but I think he could do well at Shells. He's already proved that he can do it in the Premier Division. Um, so I hope it works out for him. I thought he done well in a bow shirt, and particularly that last minute winner against Waterford there couple of years ago now, which
Yeah.
was good, great night. But yeah, wishing the best of luck. Two more players signed for Shells as well. Glenn McCauley and JJ Lunny. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I was surprised by JJ Lunny going to Shells. I thought he'd stick around for another year at Bohs, but uh, he's probably looking for game time. He wasn't really a consistent starter this season, so he look as Michael moved to Shells, he's probably looking for game time as well. As with Macaulay, I think he's probably been one of the flops of the year. Anyway, he hasn't made an impact at all. Like he missed a sitter against Shells actually in the game before lockdown, and that kind of summed up his whole time at Bohs, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he really got the opportunity when he came in from Pats. He's probably going to be playing like he's probably going to be third choice behind Andre Wright and Danny Corkin anyway. He didn't really impress me at Pats.
Uh,
He had a good pedigree. I think he came from he was on the books at Liverpool, and he came back to Ireland, and it didn't really work out for him. But maybe in the first division he can do well. You know, we know that the quality is a bit different from the first division to the Premier Division, so maybe he could do well there. But Lunny was one that surprised me. To be fair, I thought he'd stick around for at least another year, as you said. Like when he played, he wasn't as impressive as I thought he was going to be when he first came back. Um, he didn't really get going. I know he was poor at Waterford the year previous, but I thought it was a good sign when we brought him back. It just didn't seem to work out from him. But I wish him the best of luck at Shales. Um, one that's it's disappointing that if he does go, but he probably deserves it. Is Danny Grant? He was speaking on LOI Weekly there a couple of days ago, and he said that he is looking to go over to England. What you make of that?
yeah, it's hard to see, but or no, it's hard to like look and see him going, but like he fully kind of deserves it to have a shot over because he hasn't been over there. You remember he's gone up through the ranks of Bows and Kevin's. He's come up the ranks and fought his way into the first team. So unlike other players in the team, like they've gone over and then come back to the League of Ireland. So yeah, I think he deserves it.
Yeah, he did mention that he's not really sure whether he wants to stay another year or go over, but I think he has said that he'd probably prefer to go over to England. Um, I think he definitely deserves. He's really shown his quality this year. He's just, arguably he's on the form. He was on the form of his life this season. Uh, Tricky winger, pacey. I think obviously he's probably won't. Whole City's been mentioned. I don't think he'd get into their team obviously because it's a bit of a jump, but maybe in a few years' time he can definitely become a decent player over in England because he has got great potential. He's still only what 2021, so there's a lot of years ahead of him to go on and improve because he's nowhere near the finished article. I suppose now on to the more incoming rumours. Obviously, the Dundalk contract situation has been a big talking point lately. We've been linked with three Dundalk players uh, over the last few days. Cameron Dummigan, he's a versatile kind of defender, can play anywhere across the back four. George Kelly, striker, he was on loan at Pats for the
This
season
season.
there. Yeah, and didn't really hit the ground running there, but he was pretty decent at Dundalk when he was at Dundalk. It
Mm.
doesn't look like he'll be staying there. And obviously Daniel Kelly is also another rumour as well. I'd love to see him back at the club. What would you make of those three players if they could come in?
Yeah, if they all come in, be great signings, especially Daniel Kelly because we know what he's like from the time he was at Bohs in 2018, from kind of the summer to the end of the year. Uh, I'd say that deal is probably the Daniel Kelly one is more likely because in that right wing position we don't really have anyone of, let's say, quality and experience to come in and maybe fight for a title next year. So I'd love to see Daniel Kelly back at Bohs. I thought he was a superb player. Uh, Dunnigan and Georgie Kelly, they're both decent players. Yeah, they'd probably come in, fight their way, trying to get into the first team. But I'd have no problem with the three of them coming in if the rumours are true.
Yeah, I think starting with Dunmigan, really, I thought he played a pretty big part in Dundalk's kind of
Mm.
run in the cup. Uh, their good form kind of towards the end of the season. I thought he was probably one of the standout kind of players. He looked solid. He's a versatile defender. He can play anywhere across the back four. So I suppose that's what Keith Long likes about him. Like he's versatile and he can play across the back four. Georgie Kelly is a decent striker. I think if he came in, he'd probably be back up to Andre Wright, depending on if he
Yeah,
signs a new deal or not. But it'd be a good option to have anyway because he's still a pretty decent striker. And obviously, as you mentioned, Daniel Kelly, he's a quality player. He's been at balls before and he showed real quality. And when he went to Dundalk, he had his first season at Dundalk. I think he scored 9 goals. He had a pretty decent season. Uh, for whatever reason, he just doesn't seem to be in Felipe's plans. Um, but maybe now that the kind of owners have come in, they can offer him a bit more money. And obviously, they have a huge cash windfall from getting into the group stages of the Europa League. But we'll just have to wait and see how what comes of those rumours. A couple of more rumours have come around. Jamie Lennon from St. Pat's. Apparently, we did kind of go in for him, but was Pat's turned us down. I think we could come back in with an offer.
yeah. We'll just have to see how that one goes. With Potts kind of rejecting the deal, with Bows going again and maybe bid for him again. But just have to wait and see with that one.
Yeah, I haven't really seen much of Jamie Lennon to be honest. I know he's been a consistent enough player for Pats. Uh, he starts most games for them. I think he is an Ireland under 21 international, so looks like a decent player. Probably play along play with Bucko in midfield, but I think I'd probably prefer to see someone a bit more creative in the midfield next
Yeah,
season. Another rumour has been Waterford left back Tyreek Wilson. Apparently, not Waterford. Sorry, he was at Waterford. Us and Sligo Rovers are in for him. Would you take him?
yeah. He was the one at Manchester City in his youth career, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah, he looked pretty solid when he was there at Waterford last season. Yeah, so if he'd come in, would he get ahead of uh, Breslin or Kirk? You'd have to see, but if he was to come in, you'd imagine that one of them would probably leave the club to have. You wouldn't really have three left backs in his squad.
Yeah, well, obviously Anton Breslin is signed for next season anyway, so Paddy Kirk is probably. I have a feeling he may end up moving on. I'm not quite sure yet. I don't think he's signed for next season yet. I think he may probably end up something like Shales or something because most of our rejects seem to be gone. but um, yeah, I think Tyreek Wilson is a good player. He arguably Waterford's best player last season. I thought. Um, as he nearly got into Europe. Seems to be a bit of a serious situation going on in Waterford. I don't know what it's something to do with contracts or there's been rumours that they mightn't be getting a licence for next season. So
This happened last year, didn't it? They had like literally two players in the whole team up to about 2 weeks in the start of the season, and then they all started flooding in.
yeah,
So
so
that's not
could
great to
see it's
see, really.
probably be a similar situation to
Yeah,
last season because Waterford did lose quite a lot of good players last season, but they did bring in some pretty decent players. Like they brought Ali Coote in from
yeah. But
Brentford. He had a decent
funny
season.
enough, they finished higher in the league than they did the previous year,
Yeah.
which
Mm.
is probably a step in the right direction. But they would have been kicking themselves if they missed out on Europe.
Yeah, well, moving on to some of the more kind of general rumours going around the league. Sean Hoare, the Dundalk defender, has been linked with a move to Shamrock Rovers. Where would you see this one?
Sure, you don't really see that many players move from Dundalk and Rovers nowadays. Like there was a few about 4 or 5 years ago, but yeah, the Rovers really need him though. They've got the kind of three at the back formation. Would he slot in there beside Lopez and what's his name?
Lee Grace, is it?
Lee Grace, yeah. And then they obviously have Liam Scale there as well to for backup for them too.
Yeah,
So
I did hear that Liam Scales is apparently attracting interest from teams over in England, so maybe Sean Hoare will come in as a replacement. And I think they've also been linked with Lee Desmond off Pats, so it'd be interesting to see. Ronan Coughlin, the Sligo striker, has been linked with. He's been linked with Rovers as well. He's also been linked with maybe Derry City and St. Pat's. How would you see this one?
yeah, he's a good striker. When I've seen him play at Dailyment, he's been pretty solid. Would he, if he went to Rovers, would I think he'd be better than Aaron Green as an option? I'd say yes, because he offers a lot going forward, and he's probably a bit more mobile than Aaron around the pitch, I think. So he'd probably, if he was to go to Rovers, he'd probably hit the ground running.
Yeah, he's a decent striker, Ronan Coughlin. He works hard. And I think he's quite an underrated player. I think he is probably better than Aaron Green. Um, Still, will he start for Rovers? I think he'd be in with a shout. I think that'd be a good competition between him and Aaron Green for a starting place. He's also been linked with Derry and Pats, who I think if he went to either one of them would be a decent signing for the club. Um, Moving on, sticking with St. Pat's, they've been linked with well, actually more than a link. They're looking pretty set on to sign John Mountney and Sean Gannon from Dundalk. Two decent signs if they could get them over the line. What you make of them?
Yeah, they're two kind of real quality League of Ireland players, and if Pots are to sign them, they'll be looking good going into next season because they obviously didn't. They had a pretty inconsistent season this year, so if they do sign those players, they'll be moving forward anyway with their squad.
Yeah, I think they're two pretty decent players. Sean Gannon, particularly, has probably been the best right back in the league for the past few years, anyway. And Mountney's a decent winger as well, so they'd be two very good signs for Pats, I think. Finally, we'll touch on Shells. I know they aren't in the league anymore, but they've done some pretty good business. Obviously, they've signed Michael Barker and John Ross Wilson. They also signed Glenn McCauley and JG Looney, as we mentioned. But today they've announced two more signings. They've signed Michael O'Connor, former Waterford striker, who I think he had only just joined Ross County but then left. and they've also signed Ali Gilchrist, former Derry defender, two pretty decent signings.
Yeah, Shells are obviously looking to bolster their squad if they want to make a quick return to the Premier Division. So, yeah, Michael O'Connor's a good striker. So, Shells kind of struggled for goals last year. So they've addressed that issue with bringing in a good quality, proven League of Ireland striker. I feel.
Yeah, I think that's they have a pretty decent squad now. Like I think they still got Kieran Kilduff. He'll get you goals. I'm sure he'll bag a few in the first division if he stays at Shells. Um, Glenn McCauley could hit the ground running. We don't know about him. You know, he looked pretty shy at Bohs last season, but maybe he can do it at Shells. Who knows? Michael Barker's a solid defender. I don't know a lot about John Ross Wilson. I know he came from
Oh,
Bray, and I heard he had a decent enough season there. Um, JJ Lunny didn't do very well at Bohs last season, but could do well for Shells. I think he probably will do well for Shells because first division, I think he'd do well in that league. So yeah, exciting times for Shells. Can you see them getting back up to the league next season, potentially even winning the first division?
I could see that. I think next year the first division will be between three teams that will go for the title. I think it'll be Shells, Galway, and I think Cork will get themselves together and get a good squad. Just a bold prediction, but yeah, I'd say Shells. Now looking at the teams, they probably have the best squad out of those three teams, so they'll be favourites going into the season anyway.
Yeah, I think obviously they had a very disappointing season last season. They looked pretty comfortable to stay up anyway, but I think just a little blip towards the end of the season, and they were defending themselves in the playoff, and I thought they were pretty poor against Longford in the final, which surprised me. I thought they would have played a lot better, but yeah, I can definitely see them. I can probably see them winning the league. To be honest, I think their squad's as strong as anyone in the league. As you said, I can see teams like Galway giving them a push. I think they have a pretty decent squad. They have a good manager in John Caulfield, and there's a couple of other teams like Cork, as you mentioned, if they can get a few good players in, and Bray came pretty close last year as well. So yeah, it's shaping up to be an exciting season next season. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, fans can be back at some point.
Yeah,
Um, but pretty much that's pretty much it. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, um, comment what you make of the rumors in the league so far, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.